Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, June 14th, 2022. This is a budget work session of the County Commission of Manatee County. It is an absolutely beautiful day today in Manatee County. And today we plan to cover the CIP section, in other words, construction projects, roads, fund infrastructure, things like that. Today we have Minister Joe Henry Sr. of the East Bradenton Church of Christ, who is here to deliver the invocation, after which Army veteran and County Commissioner Reggie Bellamy will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this time, if you're able, please stand.
Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning with bowed heads and with thankful hearts for the many blessings you bestow upon us. We're thankful for the opportunity to be here in this place, in this building, with the county government. We ask your blessings upon them this day, that the decisions they make will be what's good for the community, as always. We ask you to bless our nation and our county and our state and our city. Bless them according to your will, and that we may all be able to join together in our effort to see that government is in place and that everything is done correctly. Thank you again for your blessing, and we pray that what's done here today will be pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Dr. Hopes, please start working us through today's agenda.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. At this time in the budget cycle, this is perhaps maybe the fun part. This is where you, as the elected officials, get to put your eyes and fingers on how Manatee County physically looks well into the future. Over the course of the past 15 months that we've worked together, we've seen the construction and opening of the Lincoln Aquatic Center. We've seen the Lakewood Ranch Library branch come out of the ground. We've seen the 44th Bridge cross the Braden River. And in keeping with the priorities that you each set forth last year in the 5-year capital improvement plan, we've now moved into the second year of that plan, keeping intact your priorities and the continuous process of moving these projects forward. The CFO will make the introductions, and then at the start of this morning, for the benefit of the public and your benefit, we will walk you through the navigation of the website so that the public can follow along online with the various links in navigating all the way down to the detailed level of these projects. Thank you, Mr. Chair and CFO. Begin.
Thank you, County Administrator Hopes. Good morning, Commissioners, County Attorney, citizens of Manatee County. Today, we are presenting the recommended capital improvement plan for the 23 to 27. This morning, I would like to take a moment, first of all, to answer a question to Commissioner Baugh yesterday that she asked. In the Transportation Trust Fund, we made a comment about, is there $150,000 funding in the Transportation Trust Fund? And we said it was economic development, and yes, it is economic development. There's a portion of it that's the impact fee transportation that the economic development pays. On behalf of some of the projects that are bringing growth into the county. Okay, you're welcome. Moving along, I would like Dr. Hope said, to have the citizens of Manatee County and all of you understand in our website how to navigate through the capital improvement plan and where all the publications and documents that relate and are associated to all of our active and current projects. With that, I will leave you with my senior budget manager, Candice Cruz, of the capital improvement plan. Thank you.
Will it just show up there? Good morning, everyone. Candy Cruz, Financial Management. I'm going to walk you through the budget, the CIP book for this year and how to navigate the website.
That screen is now black. Behind you. There you go. The man of the hour.
We're plugged in. Let me reseat that. Maybe.
There it goes. Okay.
IT does that every year to emphasize their need for their request.
There you go. So we have added a direct link to the main page, as Sheila showed you the other day, to get to all of the budget presentations immediately. If you click on that link, you'll find a document container labeled the FY23 recommended budget. Within that folder, there are all of the presentations that have been submitted so far during these presentations last week and this week. And then also, I would like to take you to the capital improvement website page where the book also resides. So if you go to financial management, and then you can click on the the left-hand side and the capital improvement plan. And there's a few things on here I would like to show you. We have the CIP dashboard. I think most of you have seen this before, but just to reiterate, it's the map of all the CIP projects. Our wonderful folks in GIS, David Moorhead, helps us with this. And if you go in here, you can see all of the projects. There's a search button at the top. You can click in the name. So we'll just do Canal because I know that one. And you can go to any one of the Canal Road projects, and it zooms it in, and on the right-hand pane, it gives you the project status sheet of that. You can go to the bottom of the screen, and you can click here, and you'll automatically come up with the project sheet that is inside the CIP book. Next, I would like to go show you how to navigate the capital. Well, actually, let's first look at the featured projects. So the featured projects of the capital improvement plan are identified on the main page with a link. And we also have the big 6 projects. These are updated monthly, about the first week of the month for the prior month. And when you open any one of the projects you're interested in, you'll get a financial reconciliation of the projects as well as the description of all of the projects. And lastly, so last year, I think a commissioner recommended that we link the projects to the project sheets. So we took that in mind and we did so. And if you open this link, you will get our capital improvement book, which I've already opened because it's kind of large. Sorry, which one is it? There it is. Was that it, Hunter? Oh, I see it. Okay. So if you go into the capital improvement book, you can go to any one of the summary sheets, the project summary sheets, and you can hover over the project you're interested in, and it will link you right to the project page. That was...
Okay, you've lost Commissioner Bellamy already.
No.
Commissioner Bellamy. I'm teasing. He just has a question.
I know, right? One of the things, that's the type day it's going to be. Is there any way we can quick search this? In other words, I see you have certain links up there on the page that was prior to, but
Yes.
based on a project number, shall I say, like if I'm aware of the Washington Park project number, that I can reference it to a constituent so they can quick search it, so they don't have the ability to navigate if they don't have the ability to navigate all the way through that. Is there a way we can do that?
Yes, sir. If you click the magnifying glass like that, then you can just go in here and type in the project number or a name even. So I typed in 603-1104. That's the John Marble. And I can type in Washington. and it comes up anywhere Washington appears in the CIP plan, 602-3507. And then we have the Lincoln Park Pool project, wherever it appears in the book, if you just keep tabbing through.
All right, cool. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Did I cover everything?
All right, so enjoy your recess navigation of the website and getting familiar with the projects. Any other questions for the rest of the CIP? No, I'm kidding.
I wanted to add, all these featured projects that you have out there, they are a condensed version, as some of these projects are identified in individual projects. This one brings all those projects together and summarizes them for you. So like if Premier, for example, has multiple designated account numbers, this one will consolidate them all into one, and you can see the full cost of what Premier is costing you. With that said, I'm going to start my presentation. First thing that I want to say is the cost of what this capital improvement plan is gonna cost us. It's a total of $1.2 billion, and in 23 we're placing an investment of $343 million. In total, including existing projects that are in motion and future projects, the total of the capital improvement plan is $2.2 billion. As well, we have discussed the challenges that the CIP plan has brought into our court about the funding sources and how to fund all these projects, as they are like very aggressive projects with large dollar amounts. We have talked about the supply chain, we have talked about labor shortage, and we had talked about the rising gas prices that has driven all these costs to go up. In the capital improvement plan, as an overview of the capital improvement plan, as you go through the book, there's different categories. We have the governmental side and we have the enterprise side. With each one, it breaks apart the projects that are within those categories. And this one goes along also with the IST. As we all know, there's 3 categories in the IST, but we have a whole lot of subcategories as well. And the percentages that are identified for the IST in each one are already predefined. So we decided to keep it all the same on the other side of the capital improvement. Outside of the IST, we would keep it consistent as to how do we categorize it. The 2.2 capital improvement plan is broken down into the governmental and enterprise, and as you can see, 47.7% is on the governmental side, and then 52.3% is on the utility side. The discussion of the capital improvement on the utility side will be done tomorrow in the afternoon from 1:30 to 5, as anything that impacts the capital improvement impacts all the citizens as they are rate driven. So they will bring all of that in all together as a consolidated unit. In this capital improvement plan, there's 576 projects, of which 264 of them require additional funding, and 312 of them don't require any additional funding towards completion. 114 of those 576 projects are IST funded. To talk about total sources and total uses, first of all, it's my obligation to show you that we have a balanced budget, and we do. We will be discussing today the funding sources that are driving the capital improvement plan, as in the order that they are, and I will be going into depth into each one and the factors that are driving each one of those dollars. Let's dive some more into the governmental side. On the governmental projects, there is the main funding source that we are bringing forward today for these projects, as they are large in dollar value, are debt proceeds. I will come with you at the end with a detailed information of where we are with our debt and where are we moving forward with our debt as it relates to these new additions to the capital improvement plan. The second largest funding source is the IST, infrastructure sales tax. And then the third one being impact fees and gas taxes. I will address that the American Rescue Plan, as per the list that you have approved, has funded some of the projects, and you will see it in the capital improvement plan. But we have also said that every project we bring forward, we're coming to you to explain what are we funding with these dollars as well. On the governmental projects uses, the transportation, as we had identified, is the largest of our contribution for this CIP 23-27, followed by Parks and Natural Resources and Public Safety. Fourth is the libraries with the New East County Lakewood Ranch Library and some of the renovations, some other smaller of the libraries. General government and technology coming at last. General government relates to those that, of course, do not fall under the other categories, such as it is the convention center and our parking garage project. I'm going to leave debt. I was going to go in the same order, but debt is so large and vast that it requires its own section, so I would leave that to the end. Yes, Commissioner? Okay.
Do you want questions as we go or at the end? What do you prefer?
Whatever is the preference of the board.
So I do want to understand the debt service a little bit more. Are you coming back to that? You are coming back to that?
Yes, it's my last
Okay.
part of
All
this
right.
presentation.
Thank
Yes,
you.
ma'am. So I wanted to start talking about the impact fees. We have different areas of that where we collect impact fees for. It's transportation, parks, law enforcement. And the first one that I want to bring into it is impact fees transportation. With the way that the market is behaving right now at this moment, we have seen a spike on growth, and as a result of impact fees. But in our plan, we know that this is not sustainable, so we did not project everything going up for over the 5-year cycle of the plan. So between 23 and 24, you can see that these graphs kind of go a little bit spiking up, and then all of a sudden it just starts spiking down. This is the way the Manatee County has done conservatively in our projections. As you see, our revenues coming in and being brought in order to see what projects could be funded with impact fees. At the same time, these projects are potentially identified as impact fees, but as the market changes, we might need to have the desire to shift and find a different funding source. But we won't get there until the time comes and we see what is coming up.
Okay, Commissioner Whitmore has a question.
Yeah, what's in our reserves for impact fees on the transportation? Am I missing this on here? Revenue expense?
So you see your beginning fund balance. This is where you started at the beginning of the year.
Wait, what? I didn't hear, sorry, what?
In your slide, you see the line that says beginning fund balance.
Right, that's what
So the beginning fund balance is where you initiated your cash, technically.
That's the
most of it.
reserves.
That's your reserve. And then projecting all the cost of the projects as we see that could be funded potentially by those impact fees, then you see the very last row that says total.
Yeah.
That's where we are projecting where the balances of your impact fees are going to end. And of course, this is going to roll into the next year, so it's a cumulative factor.
And in the past years, we have spent down the reserves because of the amount of reserves. So is everybody comfortable with the amount we have here that we won't have to do that again? Because we use that to fund our departments, the reserves, some of these too. So are we going to look at that again? I mean, I forgot what they went up to, Scott, 70 million?
Yeah, when you, tomorrow afternoon, we're going to go back in detail at the fund balances. And that's when you'll see both the current fund balance and reserves as well as the projected fiscal year end fund balances moving forward. And that's when you'll be able to make decisions as a board what you're comfortable with based on the information we've given you.
In your fund summary document, Commissioner Whitmore, you can also see these impact fee funds, that's why it's very important that we itemize those funds for you so you can see the variation of our reserves from beginning to end as we fund all these projects and operations as well. Okay. Moving forward to the impact parks and libraries impact fees, you can also see the same pattern going in. The parks impact fees, though, is not as heavy and as large as the one in transportation, obviously. So we have placed very conservative projections on the revenue based on what our historical data and what the trends that we have seen moving forward we have done over the 5-year of the plan. As for the expenses, we have placed heavily reliance in the parks on the impact fees for the parks. So, I mean, the dollars are not as high and aggressively growing as the ones on the transportation. For the libraries, again, we have a good balance to support, but only, of course, we know impact fees is only for growth. So like, new libraries coming up and so forth. It does not include the renovations or anything like that because we cannot fund renovations with impact fees.
And an important note here in line with the earlier question, if you notice, we're building back the fund balances. Part of that is like an inflation hedge or coverage for inflation. But as noted, we very effectively swept a lot of the stabilization funds to move these projects forward last fiscal year. And so you'll notice that what we're doing moving forward is we're gradually and conservatively building that back up to, in part, account for inflation in our cost, but also to give us a little bit more of a buffer moving forward. And you'll see that in each section as we go through these various funds.
Commissioner Thatcher.
So is the goal on that front to return the reserve percentages to what they were before?
No, sir.
Okay. And so between where we are now and where we were before, what would our goal be between the two?
We've done a couple of things. One is we've factored in for the next 2 years a rather aggressive 50% inflation in the capital project cost. And so some of that you'll see that's built in here. We're not taking an approach to build back the level of stabilization funds that were there before we started this aggressive capital improvement plan. And we're certainly maintaining as a base that maximum 20%. And as I said, tomorrow afternoon, when we get into the fund balances, you as a board will be able to make the determination whether we're holding back too much in the way of funds moving forward. Also, we're trying to minimize the debt. As you know, we've had a strategy of moving forward with the short-term debt, and now we'll be going forward with long-term debt. And so we're being cautious in that we want to spend the cash flow on these projects and minimize the amount of long-term debt.
Yeah, thank you. Just for anyone, if this is the first time you ever watched a Manatee government meeting, in the last few years, in I believe we had what would be if you were making the case to a taxpayer, I think it was an embarrassing amount of their money in reserves when we had just over 500 million sitting, and this was before inflation, had really hit hard, and before, and so I don't want to go back to those days. I would rather either lower taxes or get a job done that the taxpayer would appreciate, that the taxpayer preferably can drive their car on, but if not that, something. And of course, I do understand rainy days come, and we do need to make thoughts or plans for the future and be wise. But I don't think any of us, or I shouldn't say any of us, I don't think the majority of this board wants to go back to those days of holding so much of the people's money in reserve.
Thank you. Commissioner, our goal through this process is to show you what we believe will be needed for the projects and how much revenue we believe is at your discretion to determine whether or not you want to bank it like prior administrations or you want to pass relief to the taxpayers.
Okay, thank you. And as Commissioner said, if this is your first time you've watched a government meeting, you have a lot of catching up to do on the series. Commissioner Servia, you're next on the board.
Yeah, and okay, so I'll just say to Commissioner Satcher, I'm all in favor of lowering taxes and building our reserves because we need to be very careful with the taxpayers' money. What I will be looking for in this presentation, as we talk about bonding these improvements, the length of time that we're bonding them, the length of time that it's going to take to build them, and make sure that they're being built in conjunction with the debt payment. So I'll be looking forward to hearing that. And isn't there a requirement when you're using bond money to build capital improvements that it has to be done within a certain amount of time? It's not, you can't stretch it out like 30 years, can you? I mean, I don't know all of that, but I'll be looking to you to help me with that.
So two things on that as a note. The amount of years you can bond an asset for depends on the asset itself. So if you build an asset that has a 30-year life, that's how long you can bond for. On the other hand, while you're building a project, the rule is that you have to have it built within a period of 3 years. Otherwise, you are going to be facing arbitrage costs and paying interest over these monies.
Okay, that's the information that's very helpful to me. So if we bond it, we have to build it within 3 years. Is that what I just heard you say?
County Attorney?
Mr. County Attorney, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yes, the Internal Revenue Code requires that at the time of issuance, we have to be able to represent that we anticipate spending down 85% of the bond proceeds within 3 years of issuance. And the consequences can be, paying arbitrage rebate, but they can go beyond that and be an overissuance of the bonds that jeopardizes the tax-exempt status of the bonds. But it's basically an 85% within 3 years rule.
Mr. Chair, I might note that's why we took the strategy of getting the short-term debt, getting projects into design and engineering, so when we go out to bond, we are ready to go.
And I'd like to know, over the last year or two, how many projects have we put in the hopper to complete, and where are they? Can we look back and see how we're tracking to build those projects as we go forward and think about extending bonds to build those projects?
Commissioner, you're absolutely right. That's why we went through the overview of the website where you can go to every single project. It will show you the spend, what the budget is, how much of the budget's been spent, where the project is towards completion.
And I'd like for it summarized at this workshop, okay? I'd like for you guys to summarize that too.
All 600 projects?
No, give me a number,
Okay.
or a percentage.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have Commissioners Baugh and Whitmore on the board. Commissioner Baugh.
Yes. I would suggest, Dr. Hopes, perhaps that some of the commissioners who don't understand this process thoroughly, maybe there might be a class or something or somehow, to take it today when we're supposed to be going through the CIP is slowing us down. We need to move forward. So for those that don't seem to understand the process, perhaps you can help in some other way. I heard Commissioner Surrey, and I totally agree with her, talking about reducing taxes, and I think that is important. I think that's where we're going. And it's nice to know that we finally have a consensus on this board about doing that, because it was a real battle last year, as I recall, to get it done. So, I think when you look at what you're saying, Sheila, and how we're moving forward, I think it's obvious with what we've done this past year that we are increasing our reserves, and I think Commissioner Satcher's correct. I don't think the majority of this board want to go back to the reserves that we had before. That obviously wasn't done in a professional manner. To sit back and keep all the money in reserves and not build the roads and the things that we need for our citizens. You talk about the word, I hear people say this all the time, criminal. To me, that's almost criminal. So I think we're in the right direction, and I appreciate all the hard work, and I understand your logic for what you're doing. It makes good sense. It makes good financial sense. So, please continue on. But seriously, if there's something in the procedures that's not understood, maybe you might want to give some commissioners I don't know what to call it, but I don't think it should be today trying to cover what we're trying to cover today. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Whitmore.
In all due respect, I'm requesting the snarky remarks from everybody stop right now. This is getting old, and it's embarrassing Manatee County. So last year, and she makes a comment because she can't be quiet. Mr. Chair, could you control our board, please? Last year,
Unfortunately, I cannot. That's been clearly displayed.
George is the one that actually suggested the tax reduction last year, everybody. And all of us were a little bit hesitant, KVO, me too, because they saw what was going on and go, look what's going on. But we did it. And Commissioner Baugh has voted for every budget. I did a public records report except for 2. I looked it up for the 5 or 6 years. So, you keep saying it's a few of us. It was the majority of the board, Mr. Satcher. It's not us against them. We are all here to do the job of the people, and we are embarrassing everybody. The majority up here is 4 people. So we did reduce taxes, plus I have reduced taxes, and I don't know if anybody else was here once before. When I started, the budget was $670 million. That reserve we didn't have then, but Ed took it out of all the departments and created the, stabilization. Anything over 20%. That carried us through the recession. Then they built up the reserves, and now that money is being used to get us where we are today. So, we rely on our educated, experienced professionals giving us recommendations during budget. So let's all stop the noise today and let's get our job done. It's really embarrassing on the entire community, and I don't want to hear any snarky remarks. Let's be professional for a change. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner Servia, and then Commissioner Cruz.
Yes, thank you. And Commissioner Baugh, I do encourage you, please stop the political games and let's get to work. We have a lot of work to do. Stop your political games, okay? No one needs a class, at least I don't need a class, but I have every right to ask questions about this budget during a budget work session, and they are valid questions, and I will ask all the questions I like. My goal with this budget, reduce unnecessary costs. Yes, we need to build back our reserves. We do. I don't know what the magic number is, but these are tax dollars. These are not our personal dollars. We need to be very conservative with them. And we need to give the taxpayers a tax break, because during this inflationary time with property values and the perfect storm that we're in, people cannot afford to live. I think everybody on this board agrees with that. So those are going to be my goals. And I have a lot of questions along the way. And one of those questions is, can we accomplish that by reducing operating expenses. What does it look like if we take a 3% across the board reduction of operating expenses? Because what I don't want to do is rely on our reserves to balance this budget. We need reserves for unknowns that lie ahead. And if the commissioners who are now 2 years on the board they've realized that. I know George has. George sees that. And I hope the rest of you have too, because there are always things you can't anticipate. So I'll be looking for that magic balance, and I'm sure it's probably different amongst all of us, but I'll continue to ask those questions and get to where we need to be.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, I was going to say is, and I don't disagree with you, but we're trying to talk about the CIP, and you guys can talk about whatever you want. I don't control this by any stretch of imagination, but this is a long presentation with a huge binder here, and we're kind of talking about operating expense items. We're talking about reserves for our taxes and millage, not about our parks and our libraries and our infrastructure. And we've got a full day's program here, and all of you want to talk about your projects and your department. So all I'm saying is I'm requesting, I'm not insisting because I don't control it, but can we allow Sheila to give a detailed presentation, and then we can all have fun arguing over where the next pickleball court should go, because this is more of a conversation for tomorrow afternoon, more of a conversation for after the break about how we're going to handle lowering taxes and increasing reserves, because the reality is they go in opposite directions. You can't lower revenue and increase expenses without taking it out someplace. So I something like a flat across the board cut is something that would have to be done, and people need to know it. But that's a conversation for another day. I think this is more than a full day's worth of information here, so I would just request we focus on the task at hand, because this is the longest day of the budget we've got, really, when we all start getting into it. So that's my request.
That was exactly my point, Commissioner. Thank you.
So thank you, Commissioner Cruz.
Yes.
And I'm going to agree with that. The county's, our staff and the administration have provided us with all the tools that we need to review those projects in depth. I count 21 county employees sitting here in this room right now, whatever that adds up to hourly. It's pretty significant. So I don't want us to sit here and go through something that is available online that we could easily do on our own. So I'm going to encourage commissioners to, if you have questions, of course, ask them. I am going to recommend that you keep your questions related to today's workshop. We're all politicians, and we're all involved in politics, and we can all sit here and point fingers and claim that others are, bringing politics into things, but that's the way it is. That's politics, right? But let's not continue to waste county staff time and dollars accusing everyone of being involved in politics. We're all involved in politics. There, it's out. Madam CFO, please carry us on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Moving along with the impact fees and the law enforcement, we have made in our efforts to use as our reserves as well. If you notice on 23, our revenues that we are be receiving on the year, our expenses will exceed the revenues that we will be getting on that year, which means we will be having to dip into our reserves on the impact fees on the law enforcement. However, moving forward, like I said, it's a cumulative, this report is cumulative. So in 24, you see that we are recovering from that and so forth. There had been some projects that we have had to move out into the future, further years, simply because the funding source was not there. So it is a game of how much do we have and how much can we fund. With the public safety impact fees,
Ma'am, I'm just have you stop just a second. You lost Commissioner Whitmore.
I'm so sorry. I just had a brain blank there. The impact fees for law enforcement and public safety only pay for capital, correct? The cars, the supplies, not the operations, I know that. But does that include also their substations and all that stuff? Yeah. Oh, it does, okay. I've always just learned it was the cars and all, so it does include the substations and the fleet facility and all that?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Those related to growth. Those related to growth.
Got it.
Like
Thank
new
you.
substation, if we were to put something out in Parish, that's related to growth, but not replacing an existing one in an area that's already.
Yeah, it's just far more frequent that we're adding officers than we're adding substations. Right.
And the big one around law enforcement was the capital equipment related to the new deputies that are in this fiscal year, the cars and things like that.
And if I may, when I talk about expenses in this slide, I am adding and contemplating also the operating impact of it in that total. So like when you approve, like Dr. Hope said, the $900,000 addition of impact fee for the sheriff, those are baked into this number that you see of $6.7 million in '23. Moving forward, I want to move on into the gas taxes. As we all know, it does not matter how much the gas goes up. We only collect based on the number of gallons that we sell. So we have seen an increase in the collection, but we have not seen an impact that is that large to cover both operationals and capital expenses. So it has been quite a challenge to have to distribute all these gas taxes accordingly. As you can see, of all the different types of gas taxes that we have, the 1 to 4 cents, the 5 to 6 cents, and the 5-cent capital, and the 9 cent, which is used for maintenance. In '23, our revenues our fund balance is estimated at $14.5 million at the end of the year, which is used as a recurring. Again, it's a cumulative. It moves on into the next year for the use of the next other projects that are coming in the pipeline for the '24 through '27 as well. In the governmental side, we have we're showing some of the main featured projects that are in this plan in itself with a rough ballpark number of what they're going to cost. They're all out into the entire plan from '23 to '27 out into the future. So in the general government, we have the convention center, multipurpose room for 10.8. The convention center expansion, $5.6 million. The county parking garage for 33.5. And I'm going to just kind of like make a mention here. These projects and these values that you see right here and I'm identifying are without the inflation. Why? It's because I have a special reserve capital that adds into that inflation factor and is set aside. I can't put it in the project because I don't have an identified inflation knowledge of where is that going to be. So that's why I placed it in reserves. If the inflation comes at 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%, whatever the project may need, which we have seen in this coming year and has gone from anywhere till 40 to 50% up. So all that is placed in a special capital reserves, and it's not identified in this cost that I'm outlining here. These are just at the project level. In parks, we have continuing the Lincoln Park improvements for $2.1 million, John Marble Park Gymnasium for $13.2, Parish Community Park for $8.9, GT Bray Dive Well, Learn to Swim Pool 1.7, Premier Sports Complex Swimming Pool 13.6. Public safety is the Moccasin Wallow EMS station with the ambulance at $3.2 million. With the law enforcement, we have the new jail medical wing, the new medical wing at 16.1, fleet facility at 6.9 for the sheriff, and the new property evidence building for 6.8. On the road improvements, we have Canal Road for $21.9 million, Moccasin Wallow Corridor for $82.9, the 59th Street West from Cortez to Manatee, $31.3 million, 63rd Avenue East from US 301 to Total, $16.1 million, 75th Street West from 20th Avenue West to Manatee Avenue West, $11.9, Lena Road south of 44th Avenue East to Landfill Road, $8.5 million, Lorraine Road, Stereo 64 to 69th Avenue East, $38.1, Upper Manatee River Road, north of Stereo 64 to Fort Hamer Bridge, 5.8. On intersections, we have the Players Drive at Lorraine Road, 1.7. 43rd Street West at Manatee Avenue, 3.3 million. Turtle Avenue at Whitfield Avenue, 1.3. And several sidewalks at Erie Road, West Sidewalk Phase 2, 4.4. Memphis sidewalks, 4 million. And Somerset sidewalk safety improvements for 1.2. These are only most of the,
Go ahead, finish your thought.
oh, sorry, I just saw Chad.
Mr.
back here.
Butso just popped into the room, Mr. Chair.
Sure he did. So I have two commissioners on the board. Chad, Mr. Butso, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Commissioner. Chad Butso. That one slide that had Upper Manatee, if anybody's wondering, that somehow we got a typo. It might only be grabbing 1 year of the funding. That project is more like a total budget of 22.6 currently in the thing. So it's just a typo there. It's one of the big six, so it is an expensive project.
No, that's an important note because they're keeping score of who's getting what allocated on these projects. So
I'm
that's a
literally
big
writing it
factor.
down right now. I'm writing up the totals. And District 1 might be getting the hatchet here in a second.
Some of that
we ready for
funding is
commissioners?
already active.
Okay, so I have Whitmore and Servia on the board.
We've changed the name, and I don't know why, of Parish Community Park. It was called Central Park. Is this the same park, or is this the second park that we're looking at for a location? So where is this now? Because I've noticed in all our budgets, it switched from Central Park to now Parish Community Park. So where is that?
Yes, ma'am. This is Phase 1 of Parish Park by Fort Hammer and Erie. This
So
is the first
is that
phase.
community, is that Central Park, or no, that's the one we're looking at buying?
I don't recall it being called Central Park. Parish Community Park's the one.
It's
we're
always
calling.
been called Central Park.
Tom?
Oh, the girls in Parish Civic Association always called it Central Park. Okay.
We can have a contest to name the park later, Commissioner.
Okay. All right. So the MSO New Property Evans Building, that was mentioned yesterday. Where is that located? Over by the current sheriff's office?
It's
Are we
lo-
expanding?
It's located by the Child Protection Services, and that's where they preferred it to go.
Is that where the mall was, where that used to be a bank or
It used to be a
whatever?
Bright House building or
Bright House.
Spectrum.
Okay, now I know where that is. Okay. 59th Street and 75th Street. I know everybody says things about West Bradenton, but in all my years here, everything has gone out east. Everything. Even in effects to GT Bray, it was the only park, so it was packed, so we couldn't ever close it down. So what you see now, I know we all make fun about stuff like this, but it's the oldest part of the community now. And they haven't been, there's been nothing in West Bradenton. I'm seeing Cortez Road. I know everybody's complaining about that pedestrian thing, which is kind of weird. I've not seen as much activity in the west part of Manatee County in years. So yeah, I know we all make fun, but I think it was time because we've sent everything out east because we've been so busy and we're growing so fast. So I had to bring that up. That's it.
Just a note, Mr. Chair, we have corrected the slide for Upper Manatee Road.
I'm going to ask a very quick question. Where is the property evidence building for MSO going to be located?
Yes, sir. It's going to be located at the Child Protection Services area.
Supervisor of Elections, basically?
Across the street from that, the old Bright House building.
Oh, okay. I know where you're at. Okay, thank you.
On that southwest corner.
Sure. Okay, Commissioner Servia.
Yes, thank you. So I have a couple of questions, starting with the county parking garage. So $33.5 million is a lot of money. It's in the CIP I see now, and I don't think it's something that we really planned for. And I know the history is that the city owned the parking garage until just recently, a couple of years ago. And I remember when I was elected in 2018, there were some improvements, maybe sealants or different things that were happening to preserve the life of the garage and extend it. So I'd like to hear options to full-out replacement of the garage. And have you done an analysis of what could be done to extend the life of the garage, what it would cost versus tear down and rebuild of the garage?
Commissioner, we have an extensive engineering study, which we will make copies and distribute it to you with regards to the options. We are also compiling all of the expenditures to date since the county has held the property, what was spent, what was done in response to prior engineering assessments. And as I mentioned, once property management took a look at the latest engineering study on the repair costs necessary to extend the life for about 5 years, it was determined that it was in the best interest of the county and the taxpayers to build a replacement garage. But we will be happy to share the engineering reports and the analysis of the data that went into the decision analysis.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, not only for us to understand, but for the public to understand. And Charlie, I know how you manage our public investments. You do a really good job. I'm assuming you've done annual studies to look at that garage for the 2 or the 3 years that we've had it. So I guess my question is, why all of a sudden did it become in such disrepair? And I just want to make sure that what we're doing is again, the most cost prudent thing to do with our tax dollars. Also, the catwalk, the little catwalk that leads from the garage to the building. I remember some time ago it was leaking and we had to repair that. I mean, has that been evaluated, or is that part of the garage replacement?
Commissioner, we have several projects here at the admin building. We have a new roof going on, a stairwell ventilation, the catwalk, and a flagpole. So all that's being analyzed right now. The parking garage, I will tell you, the county's always maintained the garage. Even though the city owned it, we maintained it. So I'll give you the history. In 08, 09, we spent over $333,000 with structural preservation systems to do a complete remodel of the parking garage. We spent over $67,000 with ZNS to do construction manager to make sure it was all put in correctly. In 2013, we put another couple $100,000 into the parking garage. We also did a change order to put the best sealant on the parking garage we could. Over the last 15 years, we've done upgrades to the lights, we've painted it, we've pressure washed it, we've done this. When, unfortunately, Surfside, I believe in Miami, when that hotel came down, I directed Tom to go do another analysis of the parking garage. The moment it came in, I immediately went to Dr. Hope's. I actually interrupted your meeting and said, sir, we have an issue. And we've been evaluating it since. We've hired a second structural analysis to do a peer review of the first analysis to make sure we're correct.
And really, the second study is to give us a safety factor on how much time we have before it becomes a significant issue. And I will tell you, when you read this latest engineering report, they did a very thorough assessment, as most responsible governments did after Surfside. Mr. Bishop rapidly moved to bring in the engineering firms to look at all of the administration building and the parking garage, and internal examination and contrast dyes, and it clearly showed the deterioration basically from the inside out because of water intrusion over the years.
Good job.
Yeah, so I appreciate all of that information, which hasn't gotten out yet. And, what I'm wondering myself is, I remember back during the Great Recession, how, everything that the county was doing as far as maintenance and operations almost came to a stop because there wasn't any money. All the revenues were in the toilet, and there was no money to do much of anything. That's, in my opinion, that's why we had so much flooding in South County, because we didn't have the money to clean and maintain all those ditches and stormwater facilities. And I just wonder myself if that's what happened with this garage during the Great Recession. Maybe we didn't do everything we could have done, and it shortened the lifespan. Whatever it is, we are where we are. I just want to make sure that the money is spent in the best way. Moving on to parks, I see these new improvements and converting the GT Bray dive well to a learn-to-swim pool. We've talked about that. Are there any major amenities at any of our parks that need rebuilt that aren't on this list? Because as you said, GT Bray is an older facility. We have older parks throughout the county. I just don't want any unexpected surprises. Have we evaluated all the parks? the different pools that we have, the different gymnasiums, and the more expensive amenities, are there any that need major upgrades?
Commissioner, the detailed capital improvement plan, this slide is merely the featured projects, and by no means should it be interpreted as a comprehensive list of all the projects. There are numerous other projects, for example, at Marble, that go beyond what you see on this page. The multipurpose field, so I encourage you and the public to go to the website and look at the detailed list of projects in the capital improvement plan, including replacement of facilities in parks that are not on this one main project slide.
I understand that this is the features, Dr. Hopes. I do understand that. But we're talking about projects that might be, $1.5 million. I just want to make sure nothing's being overlooked. All right, I did have a question about the property evidence building, but you guys have talked about that. And I guess my last question on that would be, is there any other existing location that we can use for the sheriff's property evidence building so we don't have to construct a new building?
No, ma'am, we've been asked numerous times to look across the street at the old jail. We've done 2 structural engineer analysis. That is a live load type floor. It's not just designed to handle property and evidence.
We have looked at abandoned grocery stores. We've looked at every option in the county, and we've coordinated with the sheriff with regards to his requirements for access and security. And after since I've been here, after a good 15 months at looking at all viable alternatives, this is where we have landed, and we need to move forward with the sheriff.
Okay. And if we can't even store records across the street, I don't know how we're going to convert that building for human occupancy. So that gives
Not
me
a conversion, it's a
big
new
pause.
building. It's a new building.
Across the street. It's
on the
designed-
site, a new building on the vacant land next to the existing building.
No, Commissioner Survey is referring to, you're referring
jail.
to the old jail.
Yep.
Yeah.
The old jail is designed for live load. It's for people. The spacing of people is more spread out as opposed to individual records and or equipment.
Right.
Yeah. Tom, you want to explain this, please? You're better at it.
$6.8 million, a lot of money.
Tom Yarger with Property Management. Yes, the old jail is, as Charlie says, it's designed to hold people. The concentrated loads of storage and those kinds of things, paper and everything, if the alarm system were to ever go off, everything would get wet. It would create a load that the structure right now cannot support. So with people and a little bit of furniture and things like that, that's exactly what it's designed for.
And when we purchased the Child Protection Services building, the final site plan came with a 2-story building on the site plan. So this is going to allow us to expedite the process. And the idea is to build a 45,000 square foot facility.
Is that all, Commissioner? Okay, thank you. So I'm next on the list. And I would just like to address Commissioner Satcher because I have heard comments that you feel there are too many projects going on in District 3 and that you feel that it's being favored in some way, shape, or form. And I would just want to point out that a lot of these projects are smaller projects, intersections, a dipping pool or a kiddie pool, basically at GT Bray. Even the road projects are significantly smaller than a lot of the others. So I went ahead and added up what's on this page 14, and District 1 has just under $130 million in projects on this page, and District 3 has 55.
Did you
Commissioner
compute the
Satcher?
percentage of impact fees being collected in your district versus his?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not work in impact fees. However, I think it's worth noting that the people in District 3 are taxpayers just like everybody else, and they own this government just like every other taxpayer. They own an equal portion of this government just like everybody else. Commissioner Thatcher. No, actually, I don't think anyone's on the board. I didn't know if he wanted to speak or not. I was just giving him an opportunity. Otherwise, Commissioner Whitmore is on the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I do think it's important for everyone watching at home to know that we've got some good and exciting things happening in District 1. There's big projects moving forward, a bunch of money that's coming in. Now, I do not blame the chair for this one little bit. But I will say that when we start talking about something that seems very unemotional or no big deal, when we start talking about $500 million sitting in reserves for years, those were your roads. If you're in District 1 or District 5, if you're in the east of the county, actually that's not even true. If you're in the western part of the county too, and you get frustrated sitting in traffic, I want you to know that your road project was funded. And the funding for that project, for that road to get fixed, was sitting in a reserve account. No, it wasn't called a reserve because the state only allows the government to hold 20% reserves in the county government. So the old administration changed the name of it and to stabilization. And then went well beyond 20% and beyond 30% and I believe beyond 40% of reserves. And so all of the things that you wish you could have, all of the potholes you wish you could have avoided and all the turn lanes that you should have had and all the 2-lane roads that should have been 4-lane roads, all that frustration was sitting in a county bank account for years. And now, starting 2 years ago, we are trying to right that wrong. And it is taking a little bit of time, but I do appreciate the support from the administration here at the county, the new administration, and from this board to get us moving with, as I haven't done that math, but the $155 million worth of projects that we're moving forward on. So thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. And I agree with basically everything you said. And I, of course, support the projects in your district. I just wanted to make it clear that my district is not running roughshod over the others here.
I'll remind you that the county parking garage is now in your district, so did you add that?
I did. You're right. I did not include the county parking garage. I forgot about that.
That's just a replacement. That's a replacement.
I have Whitmore and Servia on the board. Commissioner Whitmore.
In all due respect, Commissioner Satcher, you are 100% wrong. We didn't do West Bradenton because there was no impact fees. There was no building to build the roads. You can say whatever you want. You weren't here. You didn't realize what happened during the recession. I don't think you lived in the county then. The professionals at the county recommended this, and we've been able to get where we are today. So in all due respect, you can say whatever you want. It's not true. I do want to say, Charlie, actually, first of all, protective services and the records, you are right. When you said that, I forgot. They had designed it to build a second floor to do that. Now, the problem is the sheriff also has cars and coaches and all that stuff, and that's why we had looked at one point moving it to the Lena Road, because he wanted a gigantic thing to take the big evidence. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. And also, Charlie actually got this job because of the parking garage. I called it a Hunsaker. And what happened, they had done an initial study, and it hadn't been moved forward. So that person got terminated, and Charlie got the job, and Charlie got it moving. So Charlie's done a good job. I just wanted to say that because I wanted to get a little history. We paid $1 million every year until a year and a half ago, and the deal was so that Bradenton could allow the citizens of Bradenton to park there as well as our employees. And that's how it worked out. But I never knew who actually built it, so I'm glad or who owned it. I thought we owned it, but Bradenton owned it until we finished paying that last payment, and we paid it for years during a recession. And I think Bradenton once gave us a little bit of a deal for 1 year because it was really bad. So, and I appreciate the thing with the mayor on the news last night. He was quoted that he will help us with any parking situations that we need if we have to do this, and we do have to do it. So.
Yeah, I told him I would be needing his parking space when the garage comes down, and we split it 50-50. Commissioner Servia, you're next on the board.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment to Commissioner Satcher, which is the way it used to work, sir, is that growth paid for itself, that impact fees were used to pay for growth. The change that happened recently was that we would take general revenue. So, for example, people in Kevin's district are paying for roads in your district, if you want to understand it better. So that's just a philosophy change. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I support getting ahead of some of this infrastructure, but remember, it has to be balanced. Sarasota County just raised their impact fees probably for that reason. They don't want to spend their general revenue on growth roads. So just try and have a round understanding of all of the fees and what they're used for.
Commissioner Ball.
I don't want to get involved in this. This is not where we should be right now. First of all, growth has never really paid for itself in this county, and we did have money in reserves that we could have used. We also have massive money that is invested. So you can make the excuses all you want, but the money was there. Commissioner Satcher is correct. It could have been done. It was the philosophy of the administration and the board. Commissioner Servia, I have the floor. Be quiet. The bottom line is, it was the majority of the board who made those decisions. Did I vote for them on occasion? Yes, I did. But who always complained that Public Works did not have the money in their budget to do the jobs they needed to do? And don't even start on stormwater. I heard that mentioned earlier. The money was in reserves. It could have been used. It was a decision that was incorrect and wrong. And the reason I say that is because if it was done correctly years ago, we wouldn't be in the shape we're in today. As far as the parking garage, I know all about that. It is something we've got to do. I am glad to hear that we are looking back on it because we haven't owned it that long. The city of Bradenton had it, and from what I heard from the gentleman that I've known that built it for years, is that he sent a letter every year coming up about how important it was that a maintenance contract be on the parking garage. So I think we need to stop dilly-daddling around and trying to place blame and so forth, and let's just realize that we have to move forward. This has to be done. It doesn't matter how it happened or why it happened. We got to do it. So let's move it forward, and I expect and I know that Sheila and her team have brought forth a balanced budget. They realize the need. They have things in reserves to help cover us on this. Dr. Hopes and his administration is getting different, I think, estimates together from engineers. So this is a process that needs to be done, and it needs to be built. I'm sure that the mayor, I had lunch with him yesterday. No county business was really discussed. But, you know, he is going to help us as much as he can. The city of Bradenton's in this, too. So can we please just move forward with the next section? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ball. Very well said. Madam CFO?
Thank you, Chairman. So moving on, we're going to be going through the enterprise part of the capital improvement plan. The enterprise projects total 52.3% of the total plan. These ones are mostly funded by three different funding sources: utility rates, facility investment fees, which are the utility side of the impact fees, and then there is a projection for debt bond issuance. The utility, like I said, tomorrow will be bringing in their plan for bond issuance. They have multiple projects with large dollar price tags. They will be working it all out and telling you how it's going to work with the rates. Their major investment has been on the wastewater side, following the potable water, followed by solid waste, and then stormwater. Keep in mind the utility rates stormwater improvement projects are funded solely by the solid waste fees. So as we are moving forward, the challenge of the stormwater funding has been greatly impacted as the solid waste fund has moved on into looking for other avenues to like purchase the landfill, a new landfill, and so forth. So it has been challenging this year to fund some of the solid stormwater improvements, but we have. They were not left out. Now, on the enterprise side of the featured main projects, and of course, like Dr. Hope said, these are just the main projects. it by no means means that it's all the projects that the utility system has in the CIP. So on the potable water side, they have in projects the Casa Loma water replacement for 8.3, the aluminum sludge dewatering system for 10.1, this sedimentation basin sludge collection for 3.9, the Moccasin Wallow corridor potable water side for 24.8. The Cortez Road from Gulf Drive to 123rd Street West for 7.6. On the solid waste side, you have the new landfill site location. 0.5 only represents the design just the seed for the decision analysis of the location. The new landfill site purchase, of course, that one is 34.1 million. The Lena Road Stage 2 gas expansion phase 3 and 4 for 6.7 million. On the wastewater side, they have the Southwest Water Reclamation Facility, SCADA, for 7.3.
I'm going to stop you real quick before we continue on because I have a solid waste question, and that is, and we don't have to do it now, but can we get an update on the location and the status, where we are on a new landfill site? Okay. You can carry on, ma'am. I just wanted to put that in there for a future update.
Okay. They got the water treatment plant sedimentation basin sludge collection for 3.9 million. The Manatee Woods inflow and Anna Maria infiltration, 5.8 million. Stormwater, they have the Bayshore Gardens community stormwater improvements for 2.8. Braden River watershed update for 1.7. Glen Creek from 15th to Sugar Creek Resort, 3.1. Sunnyland and North Palm Lake pipe rehabilitation for 1.6.
All right, Commissioner Whitmore and Commissioner Servia have questions. Commissioner Whitmore.
First of all, I never heard of Manatee Woods inflow and Anna Maria infiltration. Is that under the bay? Is that the line that goes under the bay, Anna Maria infiltration? You said
No,
Manatee Woods inflow, and it's about wastewater. So I know the wastewater does, drinking water comes under the Anna Maria Sound. So anyway, somebody can just explain that another time. What about the parish thing that George, we'd all brought up? We've got money going for the lift station by PJ's and all that. Is that in all this? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, there was another section about ARP funds.
ARP.
It's getting funded through ARP. It's just like Dr. Hope said, these are just a few of the main projects,
I
not
know.
all the projects. It was in the, I looked, it's still in the ARP funding schedule, so.
So it has to be taken out of the ARP. I remember we did that, but if that doesn't work, is there another option to do it? Plan B?
So I would think if you opted to not use the ARP funds that you authorized for the parish wastewater improvement program, then
Right.
we will be charged with finding alternative sources.
Well,
you.
it's a valid, not to interrupt, I know she has the floor, not to interrupt, but it is on here, but we did mention relatively recently, I believe after recess, we're coming back to
Exactly.
discuss if there are things to take off of this schedule so we can utilize it for housing and so forth. So it's important to know, is there alternatives to some of these line items? Because then we know which line items we
That's a
can
good
adjust
point.
when we
We'll
come back.
prepare that during recess for
Yeah,
you.
that's a good idea. Okay, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Servia.
Yeah, just a couple of questions on solid waste. Yes, I would appreciate a briefing if we're ready to buy a landfill site. I don't know anything about that. Glen Creek from 15th to Sugar Creek Resort. Is that Glen Creek or Gap Creek?
Mr. Butzo.
That is Glen Creek. That's the one that goes from nearly the Tropicana site on the west and goes through the old Mixon's property, just north of 26th
Okay.
Avenue, crosses 15th, crosses 27th, and enters at Sugar House Creek Mobile Home Park.
Okay, is Gap Creek one of, it's no longer in my district. It was a big problem. It's now in Reggie's district, but I hope that Gap Creek is being funded for, beginning stages.
That is being looked at with current year funding.
And the other comment I have is about ARP funding. It would be very helpful to me if for each category if we had on here which is being funded by ARP money and which is not, so that it was clear on each sheet. That would be helpful.
If Mr. Chair, if I may.
Please.
One of the criteria for ARP funding is it cannot be a project that was already funded in the budget. So you will not see those projects which are placeholders utilizing ARP funds within the primary budget or the CIP, because that would then invalidate the opportunity to use ARP dollars.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I would like to note, because look, where we are, there has not been a site selected for the landfill. There was a consultant that was engaged that did a site selection analysis of all viable sites in the county which meet the criteria, and we are deliberately working through that list to determine which ones are even available to consider. And after recess, we will give you an update of the status of that process.
It's a statement, man, Mr. Chair.
We're going to go to Commissioner Bellamy.
Yes,
for a
there's
statement.
been some communication about Gap Creek, and staff has informed me that about the current funding, so it's ongoing. So I don't want to say, well, now it's Reggie's problem. I think it's all our problem, but I want you to know that staff has briefed me on it. It's moving. Now, we do know there are some issues there, right, and it's going to be an ongoing problem, but staff has briefed me and we're dealing with it.
Thank you, sir. And I would just say that I hope that we are looking at and considering sites outside of this county, because I have a lot of people in the county who say they don't want a landfill near their house, and, okay. Well, that's not my problem. That's an outside of the county problem, isn't it? I represent Manatee County, and they don't want a landfill, so there you go. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just bringing up the ARP projects, which are not on this list. Am I correct? That's a completely different list of projects.
It's a separate list.
Right. I do think it's smart for us to know what we would do if something were to change or not fit evolving criteria on the one hand. On the other hand, I think I heard a lot of promising things about the parish sewer project, that they were looking for things that would, clean up the water sources, which that checks off that box, and then expanding sewer capacity, because of course during the pandemic so many people were home and sewer systems were overrun. So it checks off that box, and then also was not something that was currently funded in our normal operations. So of all things that are on that list, I think that project should be pretty secure to go forward with the ARP as a source of funds. However, we'll fight, or we'll work towards getting it done regardless. So, thank you.
Okay, no one else is on the board, ma'am. Carry on.
Now, I'm going to take the time to talk a little bit about the infrastructure sales tax. As you all know, we are several years into this tax, and it goes all the way till 2031. In the infrastructure sales tax project and equipment list, there are a total of 207 projects, of which 204 are in the recommended list, and of them, there's 90 that are active in motion in the CIP plan. We bring you, of the 204, there's already in the CIP 114 of them. When we did our projections for the infrastructure sales tax, we, again, conservatively, but we used the revenues estimates from the Department of Revenue as to what they expect our revenues are going to be for the year, and we build them from that estimation. In 23, we have a total investment of $17.7 million funded from the infrastructure sales tax, and we are expecting revenues coming at $29.7 million for this year. This seems to be a very steady revenue funding source, and over the last course of the years, we have seen a growth higher than what we have expected. However, when we estimate our revenues, we always project around 4%. Whether it comes higher, it's a great benefit, it's an advantage, but again, we estimate conservatively in our projections out into the year. And at the end of this fiscal year, we are approximately thinking it's going to end at $23 million, accumulating into the 24, the out to 27 plan. Over the life of the infrastructure sales tax, of the 15 years of the infrastructure sales tax, we are projecting that we are going to be receiving an approximately of $516 million in revenues, of which we have already recommended in the CIP process in the list $420 million. So we have a remaining balance expected of 95.6 as we move forward. We will be utilizing these funds. We just thought it would be important to show that we do have some expected reserves coming in.
Okay, Commissioner Whitmore.
And I remember when we first started doing this, we started upfront funding everything, and our money was going to be running out towards the end, and then if we had new projects, we're in trouble. So when does this expire? Is it 27?
In 2031, December
Oh,
of
2031.
2031.
15-year.
All right, so it'll be at the end, the remaining balance after what we've got until 27 will be 95 million, which is nothing. But I mean, and I can't imagine us still growing like we are, that we're going to be capturing this much sales tax. So, okay, I wasn't sure how long it lasted, and I wanted to, this has more or less saved our county, this tax that the voters voted for, because we've been able to do stuff that we would have had to do out of property taxes or impact fees. So this has been good. So I just want the board to stay attuned to when, what we're doing. And remember, we've only got really 95 million. Everything else has been proposed unless we change it. We've only got 95 million to last till 2031, you said? Okay. I think that's important that we all just keep that for years to come with our budgets. Okay.
And I would just throw in that even as the economy slows, some of those losses in sales tax revenue are made up by the
Because of
fact
the
that
reduction.
this government seems to be driving inflation
Yeah.
through the roof. So we get a percentage. It's not like the gas tax where you get per gallon. So that will make up some of those losses. Commissioner Baugh.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the infrastructure sales tax is paid by not just the residents, but also the tourists
That's the
that
sales
come
tax,
to, that's what I'm talking about, is
Yeah.
the sales tax, which that's what we're on.
Right.
So it's not really about growth in the county. It's really about,
Everybody.
it is about the people that move here, but it's about the people that are coming to Manatee County and spending money.
Right.
So tourism right now is just off the boards. I mean, that's wonderful. So the outlook is good. And I think the citizens, when this does come up for renewal in 2031, I will not be here, and I really hope that no one on this board is still here. That's a long way away. Well, that's a long way away. But, the bottom line is, I think they're going to see good results from the people that have visited our county. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Baugh. Madam CFO.
Thank you.
I recommend that we take a.
Is that the end of sales
recess.
tax?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, before we go to debt, we're going to hear from Commissioner Satcher, and then we'll do a recess. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had a question, and I'm not sure exactly the best time to bring it up. So 7 minutes before 10:30 seems like a time. When we're looking at the Bishop Animal Shelter, right? So the Bishop Animal Shelter was transferred over to county property, correct? Or to county control. We own it at this point. And then there's also another building scheduled to be built on that. Is that correct? That's kind of been in plans for a while that Bishop was working on?
There's a second existing building at Bishop, which in the CIP is a sort of renovation, addition, rehab of that building to make it fully functional and bring it up to capacity.
What will that building be used for if we were, what's our plan on that?
The plan is to move the current services out of the aging Palmetto facility to that second building at Bishop, and then close down the Palmetto facility.
So it'd be kind of a shelter and adoption center for our pets and animals.
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then do we have, and maybe this might be a question for the county attorney, do we have any commitments or, when we signed this, how much control do we have over names and the naming of buildings, things like that at Bishop?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Satcher, I would have to go back and look at the specific language in the agreement as far as that separate building is concerned.
Yeah, the building, not
I
the
think
whole,
we-
I understand.
We may
the
have
whole
some flexibility there. The overall facility, we do have to keep Bishop Foundation on the property and acknowledge their substantial donation to the county for that facility.
Okay, right, which is appropriate. I mean,
Yes,
that
sir.
was really a class move from that organization. And so, but for the overall property, obviously Bishop Foundation, but we're suspecting that individual buildings, like say if you had an individual adoption center, that we would probably have some latitude on what to name a building like that in the future.
I
if we
think
wanted to
so.
name it after a person, even.
And I think that the Bishop Foundation would work with us on those issues because they have, they understand could be a lot going on that property. So if there were an issue there with the agreement, that we could resolve it with them.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
fairly confident of that.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, we're in a 10-minute recess. We will reconvene at 10:35.
fill this out.
Okay, welcome back. We are just moving right along here through our CIP workshop, and we are on to debt structure, everybody's favorite. And Madam CFO, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the topic that we've all been waiting for, is debt. So I wanted to touch base not only on the debt that we have existing, we're going to touch base on the new debt that's coming in the CIP plan. As of today, Manatee County has in debt, outstanding debt, $283.2 million, of which 70% of that is in the public utility system, and 29% of it is on the general government. On the general government debt, we have right now like approximately like 9 different types of debt issuances, and all of them are except the lines of credit, because those we are expecting to pay out this year and keep them like standing until we can use them again. But eventually they will be depleting all the way out into 2049. It's important to show that we pay in debt service every year in this general government debt around $11 million. So if we think about moving forward, and you will see it when I explain the new debt, it's going to be approximately the same if we venture to want to bond more than or approximately what we have outstanding now.
Okay, Commissioner Serbia has a question.
Just a quick question, and maybe tomorrow is the better day, but so do we have an analysis of how the CIP and the debt model for utilities will play into the utility rate structure?
So yes, I will talk about the general government tomorrow. Utilities will talk about how it's going to fit in the rate model with their existing debt and the upcoming new debt that they have in the pipeline. So moving forward into the next slide, I wanted to show that all of our debts have been leveraged out into 2049. The orange signifies the interest piece that we pay, and then the blue signifies the actual principal that we pay. If you notice in 23 and 24, we start, in 25 actually to 26, we start paying out the current debt that we had, which is good news, because as we start adding more debt, other ones are paid off.
Okay, we're going to let Commissioner Cruz chime in. Talk slowly, use small words, sir.
No, just this is quick, and you actually were starting to touch on it. After fiscal year 2025, we see a fairly large pay down, and even more so, and more alarming potentially, in a couple of slides. For enterprise, we show a massive pay down after this coming fiscal year in terms of, is that just maturing debt? Are these kind of bullet payment maturity debt, or is this kind of being paid down over time and it's just coming to an end? Because if we're at a position where we need to refinance this debt, then obviously that interest is going to be higher. Are we factoring that in, or are we just paying these off and extinguishing this debt so we can place fresh debt on the county?
So that's a very good question. So in the utility, as you were seeing it, we're a little bit ahead, but in the utility, you see in 23, the reduction coming so sudden down is because of the line of credit. We are expected that the maturity of the line of credit for utilities, if we do nothing this year, it's due June of 2023.
How much is that on a principal balance? What's the principal balance on that presently, if it's due next year, if we don't
The amount
refinance?
that we've drawn down right now is, actually right now it's 29 million, but as in July, we will be drawing down another $18.3 million of that line of credit, bringing it to $48 million. Yes, sir. Now, it's due, but we are going to be paying it off in
Right.
beginning of the next fiscal year in October.
With new debt, presumably.
Yes, sir.
So it's going to be a
move it
refinance of
into-
existing lines of credit into something probably more permanent with longer term. Okay.
Yeah, I
Correct.
want to call your attention to this slide. This is the debt service payment. Oh, okay, so just so you know that it's just showing the debt service payments declining, and the majority of it going to principal.
In the general government, same thing. These both line of credits are due if we do nothing, June of 2023. But since in the general government side, we are moving into a fixed rate bond issuance and paying off, this one is going to become, it's going to go away in this fiscal year 22. I will talk, again, I'm talking about outstanding debt as of now, then I will move on into the new debt because there is so much more that I have to say about that and what we are including with the financial advisor and our bond counsel. We're identifying all the items that we need to look at and all the things that need to be contemplated in doing this bond issuance since they're going to be so large. For the enterprise debt, we have outstanding is a total of $337.6 million of that inclusive of interest. And all these bond issuances that we have, except the line of credit, of course, are at interest rate, fixed interest rates. Normally, the debt service payment of a utility system, and I'm excluding the $30 million because that one is more like a one payoff. It's going to be, it's around $11 to $12 million. In the past, that's one of the lowest we've had in a long time because they have leveraged and paid off a lot of their outstanding previous debt to get us to where they can bond for more. In the past, it has been that they've kind of like paid anywhere between $21 million in debt. Again, as of today, they only pay between 11 and 12 million. Showing again this slide is what I was showing. That's what Commissioner Cruz was alluding to. Was on 23. You see that complete dive. It's a result of the line of credit being paid off. The debt that we have recommended for the 23-27 plan, it's a total of, from 23 all the way to future, it's a total of, on the general government, of approximately, well, for the utilities, 203.8 what they're going to be bonding. On the utilities, debt for utilities and the general revenues and gas taxes, all these amounts to approximately, in the CIP plan, to approximately 280 million. Let's talk about this for a second. In the general government, we have identified a multitude of projects that can be fundable, and only because they are in motion at this or are in a certain stage of design at this point. With the financial advisor and our bond counsel and our county attorney, we're identifying the pros and the cons of bringing projects into this bond issuance that could potentially not be completed within the 3 years. So we are being very diligent at making this analysis.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, originally we were talking about 300 to 350. I know we were kind of just arbitrarily throwing out numbers in terms of total debt to utilize towards the CIP project. The discussion then was do the line of credit first to take down some of the right-of-ways, the design work, have it ready to go, because as Commissioner Serby pointed out, you have a 36-month window in order to retain the tax-exempt status of those bonds. So the discussion was, okay, well, instead of doing it at one lump sum of $300+ million, we just don't have the manpower to do it. Originally we said we're going to do it in 3 installments, and then we said, oh, rates are going up, maybe we do it in 2 installments. I only see 1 installment on here. I don't see another point in this graph where another large block of bonds is anticipated just for the sake of being able to project out debt service payment.
Yes, sir. So the plan has been that we are going for two different type of bond issuances, not type, but different bond issuances. One from the accounting for the 23 and 24 CIP, and then the 25 through 27 is the second bond issuance.
So we're just not reflecting that on this schedule? that I'm
No,
looking
this
at?
is just the projects that I have in the capital improvement plan, dollar-wise, that I am pledging debt proceeds into it. Okay? Also, this shows the balances on the projects. However, I am not reflecting in here the inflationary factor. In the governmental side, my reflection of the inflationary factor goes all the way to $80 million. $80 million. The first bond issuance that we are attempting to, and this is still being vetted through the county attorney's office and the financial advisories on the total amount of bondable projects that we are going to do. But we are thinking that we would be bonding approximately $212 million on the first bond issuance.
And that process has started, right? That was my understanding, because it's like a 90-day process. My understanding was we were already gearing up to do that before rates continuously go up 50 to 100 basis points.
And you approved that at your last county commission meeting, and,
Yeah,
and it is
okay.
in process.
So I'll make sure. All right.
But I understand the point you're making. So I will work with FMD for that long-range projection, anticipating the second tranche of bonding for the fiscal year 25-27 period, correct?
Correct.
For that second tranche,
25 to
you know.
27.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. Yeah.
Well, the second bond issuance that we have identified is approximately $112 million, and we do have a lineup of the projects. Again, these projects have to be vetted through because the 3-year span that we don't want to go over is in relation to these projects being able to be completed and taken to the finish line. So it is all still in discussions right now on what some projects, as we know, may sometimes come forward on some, and then we may need to even find other funding sources for it. For the county parking garage, we had said that we could pledge the bond issuance. We can bond it. However, there are other circumstances that where the general revenue is going to have to come forward and place funding into it. And there is a plan in the general fund that we have placed $25 million towards the parking garage outside of the bond issuance. This one will take us for the first part of the construction and all that. There is an inflationary factor of each one of these projects, and they are being built up in these bond issuances as well.
And I just want to note, because it was Commissioner Cruz in one of our prior discussions that had brought up some of these projects because of inflation, if they can be pushed into the later years of the CIP to allow kind of the supply chain and everything to settle down. And so that's also where you'll see that second tranche of potential bonding is in those projects that we've pushed out to kind of allow time for the economy to settle down and hopefully, some of these inflationary costs to settle back in.
Keeping in mind this bond issuance it's a two-tier. One is paying adding the line of credits into the bond issuance, and at the same time adding new additional monies. So for the governmental, with the line of credit payoff of the balances that we have drawn down as of July, I'm going to say July because there's another draw that's going to happen in July. It's approximately $240 million. This is inclusive of inflation. Now, inflation, we don't know where we are, so it may be less than what we are anticipating it would be. Or, more than 50%, is it likely? We don't know.
It's aggressive. Now, and I do want to note that given the county's revenues and the exceptional investment in capital infrastructure, this is a very conservative debt structure for a county growing like we are.
Now let's talk about how much we're going to pay on this debt, because it's not only borrowing, it's also what it's going to entail to pay it afterwards. Our current outstanding debt service that we pay is approximately, on the general government, is $11 million. The calculation of what it's going to take to add to this debt is going to be approximately another $10.3 million. So in total, it's going to add up to the approximately $22 million in debt service costs that we're going to have to do in per year.
That's
Again,
across enterprise and general government, correct?
No, this
No,
is
that's just
only the
general-
government
general government,
side.
okay.
Yes. For the utilities, they're adding up another approximately $9 million with their $206 million debt issuance that they're trying to bring into it. Now, utilities also have split their bonding in two phases. The $206 million is the first bonding phase. The second one, they're still trying to identify what is that going to entail. It won't be as much as $200 million, but that's what their vision is based on the CIP plan that they have right now. With that said, we have seen in the market how the rising interest rates have gone up. We have projected all this based on a 3% interest, assuming what our financial advisor has said to us is that, the last bond issuance that they did was at 2.74%. So I just kind of brought it a little bit higher than 3%. Utilities in their rates are calculating their rising rates at 4%. Their interest rate, not their customer rates. Does anybody have any questions up to here on that? Everybody's quiet. All right. So, I know, nobody wants to be in debt. When we said about building debt, we have already in all the explanations and discussions that we've had with funds and fund summaries and all that, all this new debt is built into those reserves. So we have planned the funding of this new debt into those funds. So you can see, like in the general fund, for example, because I have three, necessarily when I do the covenants for the pledging revenues into the bond issuances, I can only pledge general revenues. But we have the opportunity, like for the convention center projects and all that, tourist tax could be used for paying some of that debt service. So we can leverage some of the payments so it doesn't fall all in the general fund. Also, in the impact fees, there's an opportunity for those projects that are relatively due to growth. We can utilize some of those impact fees. Has also been baked into the cost, into these expenses that I have shown you today. All the plan is already put together. So with that said, then I'm going to move into, if nobody has any more questions about that, I'm going to move into the changes from FY22 adopted to FY23 recommended. So I have to come back to you and tell you this is what you adopted last year, and this is all that has changed. We had added into the total additions between general government and the enterprise, we had added $317 million into the capital improvement plan. We have adjusted $130 million into the plan. And we have of completions and removals, Commissioner Servia, you had asked if we could tell you how many have been completed and all that. In total has been 105 million. Now, this includes also removals, projects that have not come to fruition, projects that have reduced in amount, that have not come as high as we expected, and so forth. Okay? For a total cost in our 23-27 of the $2.2 billion. That's how we all tied it up. Again, it's my duty for you to show you a balanced budget and what were the changes that happened.
And just a quick question on that, please. So it wasn't as high as we expected. Is that because of the labor force? I mean, is that the primary
Correct.
reason?
We have seen this year so large impacts on project cost due to labor, due to materials, and so forth. So, in 22 alone, we've had projects that have gone 30 all the way to 50%, and even higher.
Yep. So that's good information to know as we go forward, as we plan for these projects.
If you want to know more details about what projects were the ones that were added, removed, and all that, we have a section in the CAP plan in your 500-plus page book that shows you the projects that were added and removed.
And completed. We have a substantial number of projects have been completed this year.
With the IST changes, I presented to you in the 22-26 adopted plan a $253 million cost of additions. We have added 3.6. We have adjusted $4.8 million to it, and we have had incompletions and removals a total of $6.7 million for a total in our recommended 23-27 CIP of $254 million.
I still remember the number, 191 projects that all the voters voted on for the IST. I remember that, and Scott was probably on the school board then. They heard it from everybody and so what's always bothered me from day one, and Commissioner Baugh and everybody can probably tell you this, is that we changed it so drastically from what the original list was. But then our board, our oversight board said it's all within the scope. So I just like to make sure again that what we have changed professionals, and legally, that we're in the scope of what originally the voters approved.
Yes,
We did a certain percent for public safety and all that stuff. I get all that.
In fact, if you recall, I think it was the last board meeting
Yeah.
where we did
Changes.
the amendment to codify compliance with, there were a couple of projects, I think, or the scope changes
Yes, scope changes.
that went to the
Okay.
board for approval.
So we can say to the taxpayers that our oversight committee has affirmed that we're spending what the voters voted for. Okay. I just
Yes.
I kind of do this every year because it's, usually if you got a list and people vote specifically on something, that's what you do. But I know it complied with all the rules.
Correct. Of all the 207 projects that are in the project and equipment list, every time we make the change of a scope or a rationale, where we change what we've told the citizens that we were going to do,
Right.
we have to do a public hearing, and that's what Dr. Hobbs is alluding to it.
Right.
We meet with the board, the advisory board, twice a year. We present to the board an annual presentation of where the budget is at and where the spending is at on the IST in December, following the end of the fiscal year. And I believe that they make a really fair assessment of where we are with the IST. They look at everything. Our members of the committee are very dedicated people and to their citizens.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And then to finalize, I wanted to touch base again. We have placed that inflationary factor in reserves. $159 million has been placed, which results in approximately 50%, assuming 50% of inflation in all of our projects. If you see one of the projects in your book, It does not have the inflation. It's all sitting in this beautiful reserve for capital that you see out here. The total of our reserves is $700 million. However, if we remember, it's all built in a multiple number of funds that have unique different uses and special and unique different types of use that those dollars can be spent on. So when we think about it, general fund is the only one where you can actually, is unrestricted to use. And of this, the general fund has approximately $19.1 million in stabilization. And with that, does anybody have any questions?
And Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, that completes our presentation of the recommended capital improvement plan for fiscal year 23-27.
All right, thank you, ma'am. So Commissioners Cruz and Servia are on the board.
A real quick question about the last one. I didn't get on the board in time. You have a reserve for contingency. Is that, you said it's only the general fund reserve that's flexible. That reserve for contingency, is that part of the capital plan but specific to projects as opposed to the lump sum for the inflation? Or what is that reserve for contingency?
That's the 50%, correct?
The reserve for capital is the 50% for capital projects. The contingency is the sum of all the funds that I showed you. On last Wednesday, I gave you a list of all the projects and each one's reserve for contingency. The reserve for contingency is those set-asides dollars. So there's a purpose for these contingencies, right?
Okay.
So in the general fund, in the capital projects, usually it's all designated for projects. So they all flow in the cash balance or in the reserve for capital.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Servia.
Regarding the reserves for the general fund, as we've already talked about, one good tropical storm and solid waste haul is going to deplete that $19.1 million. So that's just for context. And then the one thing that I didn't see in the CIP plan that I had hoped to see was something more addressing affordable housing. Because we are in a crisis. Did we consider doing matching dollars for certain things? Did we consider, purchasing land for this land trust? These are the things that I was hoping to hear about, because how are we going to make a difference in affordable housing?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
There is one item that is not in the CIP that, because the CIP was completed before my meeting last Friday with the landowner with regards to the property out in Parish. So that will be an addition to the CIP plan. The family that's selling that property is meeting with their accountant tomorrow. And so we will be narrowing down with property management's assistance the dollar amount that will go in the CIP for that first major land purchase, which will include land for affordable housing.
So I would ask, please, that the board be briefed on these big-time decisions like that. I don't know anything about that.
Obviously, the board will be briefed.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Okay, on that one, again, I actually asked to have it brought up at a meeting to vote to look for property because there was no policy. We had people going around looking for property and making deals at public meetings, and we didn't know about it. I saw it on your video. So, that's all great, but we set policy. We set the direction. And now, I've heard you've been negotiating with people, and would that be in the CIP, Mr. That's in the CIP, right? That we would put it in our plan to pay for it, right? So we haven't really talked about it. So that's all great, and we're having affordable housing. Whose plans saw this? Does anybody else here know about it? Okay, so, hey guys, we're the policy setters. And I appreciate our administrator's job is to do what he's doing. But at a certain point, like at the beginning, we need to be in the loop. So that, and then also we need to talk about hard issues too. The dam. I heard Charlie, or nobody's here, but I don't know. But I know we're going to have to replace more of the dam, and that's a lot more. I heard, we did the one wall, but we were supposed to do the sides going down, and now I hear we're going to have to redo the thing. I don't see that in a CIP. That'll be an emergency. And also, let's all get it on the table. We know that with the majority of the board that we are not going to do anything on the Musgrave property. So we need to talk about selling it or do whatever and use that money for, God knows, the park or whatever, or wherever you're planning. So again, guys, strategic planning. I don't ever remember this even on a strategic plan so far. This is planning. We set policy. So, and I appreciate all the work he's doing, but we may not want it, or the citizens may not want what he's doing. So please, let's all come together. Communication, communication, communication.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. The order of the board is Servia and Cruz. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, I agree with those comments 100%. We do need to be in the loop before these discussions take place because Dr. Hopes is doing great work, but it is not his money. It's the people's money, and we represent the people. So please bring it back to where we had it. The dam is a very good suggestion. I neglected to mention that, so thank you for doing that. And the Musgrave property, we talked about the $3 million that we paid out of our money for the fleet services for the sheriff, and then I was told it did go back into the general fund reserves. Is that where it went? Where did the $3 million that we already allocated for fleet services, it went back into our budget?
Well, right now, it's still sitting with the original funding source, but we will be bringing a budget amendment to bring it down and return it back to the funding source that gave it, which I don't believe it was the general fund. I believe it was the, Kendi, if you can help me with that one, it was IST monies, right? It was
Okay, that's
infrastructure
right.
sales tax money. So we'll be giving it back to the IST and replenishing it with general dollars.
Rather than a budget amendment, can we just do it as part of the budget process? Or do you want to bring it forward as a budget amendment?
Well, we can, with my direction from the administrator.
That was a
we can bring
complicated
it.
transaction. I assure you,
Yes.
we'll bring back to you the necessary steps at such time a decision's made regarding what to do with the Lena Road property.
But we already know it's not going to house fleet services. So I'd like to put that $3 million back in the budget. That's just my personal opinion.
But to go off of that, I mean, we've determined that fleet services is going to go on Buckeye Road, correct? Okay, well, I mean, touche. Put it this way, we must build a fleet services facility, right? The timeline on that really hasn't, nor has the need changed. The board has agreed to build a fleet services facility. We're simply down to the location at this point. I'm just, is it necessary to pull the money? I mean, we can just dialogue, you don't have to wave your card again. Is it necessary to pull the money out only to put it right back in again for the same project at a different address? Is my question.
I think that we will work through the necessary accounting process. In fact, the reality is now that the fleet facility is going to go on property that is already owned by the county, that the county took because of a tax. I think it was like a tax issue. It actually lowers the cost of the fleet facility because they no longer need the $3 million for the land.
Right.
And so we will bring back to the board the necessary authorization for the board to move money where it needs to go.
Sure. So in the end, we're looking at a $3 million savings by putting it at this location.
Absolutely.
So we don't have to buy any land.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Servia, go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. I just like the accounting to be accurate and with the latest information. Regarding affordable housing, I appreciate hearing about the parish land, but what about land that's close to transit and close to services and close to business? Because parish is a long distance for most people who don't have cars and really need affordable housing. So I'd like to see more efforts placed towards affordable housing for the future in the urban core areas. That's where we need it.
After the recess, we will have a comprehensive report to you on the land that we are recommending you dedicate towards affordable housing, including the property that you took back in the last board meeting, which will allow us to combine it to have 40 acres in kind of the urban core in Palmetto to dedicate towards affordable housing projects.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, we did discuss land banking property. So, yeah, and well, we didn't vote on it per se. I think the perception of the direction of the board was to authorize the administrator, or at least kind of give them a nod to go out and start looking at opportunities. I wish we would have looked at opportunities when land was 10,000 an acre and people couldn't sell it, some of which we just took back. But we still authorize it. I do wish we would have a little more dialogue, only because if you negotiate a price and you bring it back and we say, what is this? This is ridiculous.
Haven't negotiated
we
a
as
price
we
yet.
as a community are going to look, or as a government are going to look silly if we go back and retrade somebody. So hopefully we get to a point of a meaningful discussion before we really dig down to the nitty gritty of something like that. But, from an affordable housing standpoint, I don't think that's the best place for it. But we did discuss
Workforce, not affordable
workforce, whatever we want to call it. But we did have a discussion about land banking, and we actually discussed whether or not we would be potentially bonding the opportunity to purchase land, rezone land, and then redistribute it with deed restrictions in place. So as we're looking at the bonding and the debt we're contemplating taking down, and we obviously have a limit to how much maximum debt we can take. It's a little different than utilities and enterprise. They're their own animal with their own reserve or revenue stream. But I would like to see some contemplation of, let's at least make sure we're holding back 50 million, whatever it is, of potential bonding ability so we can do things like this when opportunities present themselves, because I didn't see that in there.
I think what would be helpful, and we have considered that, is to present to the board total bonding capacity versus how much of that capacity is being used up with what's been presented.
Yeah, and I think we did that last year, actually. We had some sort of a slide that showed that. But it will be important because there is opportunities to, again, we have the unique ability to create value where other people can't, because we can increase density and increase zoning, and then we add the deed restrictions in there and say 25, 50% workforce, whatever you want to call it, and then we sell it back off to developers, and they're kind of bound to what we restructure it. So I would like to see that, and that's why I don't think we should just be blindly, if the right opportunity comes along. I don't think anyone's flat out said, or at least I haven't flat out said, we're never going to use LENA. That's part of the land banking we're talking about. If we have an opportunity to rezone LENA, it's especially now, if you look at that LENA road property, you already have retail going across the street. So you have the ability, if we're not using it for ourselves, to work on a rezone and parcel that off.
The rezone is actually already scheduled for the first
That's my
public
point.
hearing.
So I don't think anyone's ever said we're never building it, so just dump it. If we're going to sell it back off, we should sell it back off intelligently in pieces based upon a rezone, so it's utilized for the community in the best interest of Manatee County.
Right. And Mr. Chair, I would like to make note, Commissioner Cruz is correct. In a public board meeting, you gave me direction and authorization to move forward. Commissioner Whitmore made the motion to move forward to authorize the county administrator to pursue the negotiations for that property. There was extensive discussion around land banking. We talked about using the credit line in the future as a possible source of short-term funding to acquire properties. It is not lost on me. I'm very familiar with the board's policies and state statutes. Only this board can buy and sell property. I can merely bring to you opportunities and recommendations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. The order of and Commissioner Cruz. The order of the board is Satcher, Ball, Whitmore, Servia. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was just thinking about some of these projects and, what we just mentioned with what might be coming to us later. And I will just, for clarity's sake, point out the tough position that you're in, or that, anyone is in, that the more public you are with something when you're trying to buy land, the worse spot you are in that negotiation. And so the more your hands are tied. So it is an interesting situation because if we say, yes, this is the land we want, and we're willing to pay $1 gazillion, then that person selling would be a fool not to sell it for every bit of $1 gazillion. And so we do have to put some authority to do some of that negotiation for it to go smoothly and to go in the interest of the taxpayers. And I think, to maybe
Commissioner Servia's point, as far as what's appropriate and locations and things. And that Palmetto property is an exciting property. I mean, my wife and her ministry she was driving and got lost and saw that property. And she was like, this would be wonderful for a headquarters and you could help women. And, obviously it's gone in a different direction. But as far as what she's doing, but overall, when you see that property, you think this would be a great place to live, and yet you could see how it could be a relatively inexpensive place to build out. And so I like that fit. And then also, Parrish, one of the things that I envision should a land banking opportunity present itself is multiple uses. So, we've got the need for parks and for open space, and the timing on parks and open space, as things grow out, obviously open land becomes more expensive. And then I look at some of these, smaller, well, it's bigger than the property we're talking about, but I look at some of these planned communities like Seaside, and I think there's one called either Santa Rosita. Anyway, the same designer that did Seaside Community did two more. I believe it's in Florida, where you can have this, where you have a small, cute bungalow type spot, and then a place where children are playing right outside, and you can walk, and some connectivity with trails and with parks and things like that. Maybe a pond, so anyway, I think the sky could be the limit with these caveats. The caveat for me is that we have to keep in mind the value to the taxpayer, be sure that we are keeping that first and foremost when we make the decisions. I'm not going to, none of us, I don't believe, are interested in, buying land for exorbitant amounts to sit and make, huge government buildings, and only government buildings that only benefit the apparatus, the government itself. That's not, our goal here or my goal here, and I don't believe that's the administrator's goal at all in what I've seen and heard from this project. So that's all I have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Whitmore.
Yeah, I made the motion, and the motion was to give authority for our staff to look at opportunities in North County and bring a plan back to us. It was never to buy something or negotiate with somebody. And I'm sure you would account maybe somebody from the board, at least, a liaison up here, the chair, whatever, so that at least we were in the loop. But yeah, because you're right, if we offer them something and it looks like the negotiations are going pretty good, then what are we going to say? No, we don't want it. So again, communication. Also, Sarasota did something, you all may know what they did, to build affordable housing, and I think affordable housing needs to be in the CIP, and that was a good idea. I don't know where or how, because the land banking, that is, attorney, can you put land banking in a CIP? Right, so that would be able to put it in the CIP, correct? Okay. We didn't do that. And that's our number one priority in the county. I am not attacking anybody. This was brought to attention by Cruz, and it's a good idea. Oh, by Misty, I'm sorry. But again, please guys, stop. Stop. Let's be professional. But what I'm trying to say is this was our number one priority, and whoever would have thought about putting it in a CIP, I've never seen it, and land banking may be a way to do it. Don't know if we have the money after we've just gone through this, and I'm sure you're all having a heart attack about now, but we did promise that we could use the Lena Road or Musgrave because we know the value of it, and that's land banking. And I was never an intent to sell it, Commissioner Cruz. As we know, there were people interested in it. They were going to do great things and rezone it. So yeah, that, and to make money off it, that's fine. And where it is great. So, but again, I'm worried about the dam. And I haven't had a report, but I knew there's going to be major issues. And I remember one day when we had to come up with $20 million to repair a leaky dam. So Could somebody give us a report on that, on what's going on in the future?
I can assure you in the next few days, you're going to be getting a lot of
Good.
information while you're on recess around utilities and the dam and certain other things. Happy to, I understand you're going to be working during recess. I'm happy to spend time with you.
Yeah, thanks.
And,
I
have
know.
those discussions. And I just want to go back to Commissioner Whitmore's comments. I just said probably 5 minutes ago that the one thing that we will be adding to the CIP are funds for land banking and property acquisition for affordable housing.
But you had used one example, so I think just countywide land banking.
In general, land banking for
okay.
affordable housing.
All right, I didn't hear that, and I
other capital
apologize.
investments around affordable housing.
Okay, I apologize if I didn't hear that. You're doing a good job. Thanks for your patience. I know it's hard. This is the only time that we get to have really input until further down the road, so you guys can do your summer thing. So I appreciate all your hard work.
Commissioner Whitmore, if I may add, you do have a project for the dam in the CIP for $12 million is already appropriated.
I heard it was going to be a lot more. Of course, everything is. So as long as we know, so our citizens know, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, it's almost safe to say, as long as Joe Biden's around, everything's going to be a lot more. That's just kind of rule of thumb. The order of the board is Servia, Baugh, and Satcher. Commissioner Servia.
Yes, just a couple of comments. So on fleet services, I would like to see in our documentation what the cost of that is going to be over time, and how that's going to be assumed in the sheriff's budget. So I don't remember reading that when I've gone through this. Also, we've heard out in the public that we are going to close on the property for parish, which you just talked about again, but then there's no price that's been agreed to. So, as we talk about this stuff in the public, we're talking about affordable housing on that property. Does the property owner know that? I mean, what we say in this public forum is really important. So, again, I just need more information. I haven't had any briefings in a very long time. I don't know what's going on. The Musgrave property, I didn't know that was being rezoned, and for what purpose? No one has come to me to talk to me about that independently. I'd like to know those things because I think the board needs to be ahead of all these decisions, and you need board support of the policies going forward. I think that's everything on my notes here. Yep, that's it. Thanks.
Great. Commissioner Baugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm curious as to whether or not any commissioners watched the Planning Commission meeting that they just had. There were two nice, good, big affordable housing projects that were approved, and there's several, I think there's 2 or 3 more that's coming. So, I'm sorry? No.
It's a lot coming down the
Yes,
pipe
it
as
is.
far as
That was my
affordable housing
point.
projects.
Yeah. And so, there is something being done on this. I mean, perhaps, I don't know. I mean, I knew about it, and I watched the Planning Commission. I actually went down there for part of it. So, I mean, I know what's going on.
That is ex parte communication, by the way. You'll have to
It is.
disclose that, being at the Planning
Okay,
Commission
Commissioner
meeting.
Baugh has the floor. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Servia, you worry about yourself, I would suggest. Other than that, I think, I've heard now that affordable housing is our top priority. No, it's not. It's important, but it's not our top priority. Transportation, roads. Helping the majority of citizens in this county has been our top priority. We voted on that. Affordable housing is a close second. I mean, we are working very hard on that, and I do recall, Commissioner Whitmore, I'm glad you remembered your motion, because I'm amazed you got it so quickly. I don't know how it happens. But I will tell you your motion that you made, that you said, you just remembered, okay. I do recall there being a discussion in a board meeting, us voting on it, and I do recall that we did give Dr. Hopes the ability to look into projects, and I remember, too, Commissioner Cruz, us basically giving him the ability to be the lead commissioner on this item. And George, I don't remember if I know y'all talked about some project on the board, but I don't remember which one it was. I don't know if you would recall that, but I do know we voted to do that. So I find it, I think the majority of the board, we're talking about communication. I've complained about it in the past, but I can tell you what I'm hearing today, I kind of knew. Now, but I've had briefings. I don't, I've had briefings. I'm sorry. I'm not saying y'all have or haven't. I don't know. I can only speak for myself. I have. I've had some briefings. And I asked for them, and the administrator has done a very good job, being here. And I haven't tried to burn the building down. I'm trying to work with the administrator every inch of the way. I think that's important. So, maybe we need to look at, really trying to all the board members work together in a positive fashion and not find fault continuously. And maybe we can get more done if we can stand together in a positive fashion. And that would be my hope. Thank you.
Well said, Commissioner.
Thank
Commissioner
you.
Satcher and Cruz. Commissioner Satcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about procedure. As far as adding or taking away or any adjustments that we see that we might propose to the board and therefore to the administration and administrator on the CIP, is it now or never? Do we have a couple of meetings where we could do those types of things? What's the procedure on that? Thank you.
Commissioner, we have another work session tomorrow, and then we have a number of meetings and work sessions and public hearings all the way through September with regards to that. And I encourage each of you, as you have thoughts and desires, to reach out to the deputies and me to discuss that. And we are working through recess, although some people are taking some very due time off, but just reach out by email, phone calls, and we will continue to build this. This is a process. We are here to support you as the elected officials. And I just wanted to make a note that, around meetings and briefings, as you know, when I had to pivot, from the departure of the former CFO, and given the fact that over an 8-day period of time, 6 days were full days of work sessions, that I mentioned that I needed time to work with staff to prepare for these meetings, and that as time freed up during my day, I would meet with you. Commissioner Whitmore and I met on Friday. And Commissioner Servia, your aide should have informed you that I went by your office 3 times on Friday when I had new time that became available to meet with you to discuss your issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, when we talk about the dam, are we going to get an analysis? I mean, just because it was relevant relative to the parking garage, are we going to have analysis of repair versus replace? Because you can say what you want about a parking garage. We can park other places. We can't do anything about that dam. That dam needs to be there at all costs.
I am so glad, Commissioner Whitmore, with your approval, Mr. Chair. I will tell you that a few months ago got personally engaged in the dam issue, including standing on the dam and looking and listening to the various projects that were planned to repair and patch a 50-year-old dam that was probably built with at least 25-year-old technology at the time it was built, with the addition of Deputy County Administrator DePaul, who is a civil engineer, that we are moving forward with that analysis, and we will be going out to look at that very question, which is something that certainly that analysis, I think it's a Castali analysis, should be done on anything that's 50 years old or older that you're looking at repairing. You need to know what a replacement cost is. And we had a meeting this morning at 7:30, I think it was, to discuss the various issues around utilities and the dam and those projects and how we need to move forward with those types of analysis.
Okay, thank you. And just I don't like getting involved in this back and forth ridiculousness, but just to make sure everyone understands, not speaking with Dr. Hope, says I haven't had a meeting with you in quite some time. doesn't preclude us from knowing what's going on in the county. The Lena Road rezone was literally on the project list that we all get once a week. It's been there for weeks now, so not knowing that that was even in the process is just completely not paying attention to information that's being delivered to us. That was public knowledge. In fact, two different reporters, one of which is in this room, specifically have tried to ask me about that. That was based on quasi-judicial and otherwise, we weren't supposed to talk about it. But reporters seemed to know about it, and a project list knew about it, and it was on our website about it. So that wasn't exactly a secret thing that you need to talk to Dr. Hopes about. You need to open up your email. And the land that he's referring to was so public knowledge that people from the Parish Civic Association reached out to me to start asking about what we were doing on that land that was potentially being purchased based on discussions of this county. So both of those projects are fairly public knowledge, not being hidden by the county administrator by any stretch of the imagination. It was fair, people were already discussing both of these. So, we all knew about it. In fact, even when we were talking about a project about a hospital, there was being discussion about what we potentially are going to do across the street from the potential hospital that was being discussed in the land use. So I was involved in it to the extent I knew that existed, but not to a point of knowing what stage it's in or what price are being proposed or what we're going to potentially do with it. As for Lena Road, I think everyone somewhat had some idea of what was being done because it was on the project list about a rezone. It was already scheduled at one point in time before. So, that my involvement in it was probably no more, no less than anyone else at this stage. 'Cause I think they were both premature to have meaningful involvement.
Yeah, Commissioner Cruz, if we can just dialogue. I mean, politics came up earlier in the day, and that's exactly what this is, right? Commissioner Servia is well aware. She has all of that information. It's literally public knowledge. But she's just trying to create as much sort of chaos within this building and in this government as she possibly can, and in hopes that it will make her look better as she, pushes forward with her reelection campaign. That's really all that is. So just to clear that up. You don't have the floor, Commissioner Whitmore. Commissioner Servia, you're up.
Yeah, so that's so absolutely ludicrous, Mr. Chairman. I don't create chaos. I think the four of you do a very good job of creating chaos. No, I don't create chaos. And I don't believe Dr. Hopes is hiding anything. I'm not alleging that. I just don't think that because he hasn't really worked in local government before this job, he doesn't understand the need of transparency. We need to be briefed. The board sets a policy. We need to be briefed on projects that are going forward at the county's level, okay? As for going forward in a positive fashion, Commissioner Baugh, all I ask is that we follow the law and the procedures. I mean, I do want, and that will allow us to go forward in a positive fashion. Dr. Hopes, you were made aware, the board was aware of you purchasing the parish land, but until I brought it up, land banking has never been discussed with this board or me individually. So I'd like for that to be out in front. If we're going to land bank that land, it should be a policy decision that the Board of County Commissioners is making. And as for, I appreciate you coming, between your trip from your office to the bathroom to see if I'm available while you have 10 minutes. I need time on your calendar because I am also very busy. I'm out working in my district. I'm very busy. If you schedule time with me, I'll be there. But I can't be there at a whim because I also am very busy. Thank you.
Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, just to clarify, back in April, we had an affordable housing meeting in this room, and prior to it, at the request of the administrator from all of us, I actually submitted a whole list of potential policy items for affordable housing. In fact, it became an agenda item on that meeting. There was, I believe, 8 different items that were discussed, from developer incentives to you name it. 7 of them, my master leasing didn't get through. 7 of them were voted on because it was a special meeting, not a work session. And one of those items back in April was to instruct staff and the county administrator to begin a process of, and I believe the exact word was aggressive land banking. I think I used the word aggressive in that. And this was voted on by this board, I believe 7-0, to instruct the administrator to do exactly what the administrator is doing. So it was a policy issue, and it's been a policy issue for the past 60 days.
We just need to know when it's aggressively chosen.
Right now.
Okay. Well, we need to know when. Before a public meeting. Thank you.
Commissioner Baugh.
Yeah.
You're up next.
You can't win for losing, can you? You try to do it and you can't win. They're not going to let you.
To be clear,
You
he's
know-
not purchasing property, as
No, he's
Commissioner
not.
Servia stated.
You know,
Just like he's
this
not
whole
under
thing is
investigation, like she
ridiculous.
stated the other day.
He is doing what we ask him to do. He's putting it together, and it will be coming to this board. He isn't doing anything improper. He is following the law and procedures, as we all do, generally. I would tell you, we get accused of a lot of things, and it's always the same person making the accusations. I know. You know what? Let's stop. Let's stop with the games. You want to talk about we all need to be professional, we all need to do our jobs. Yes, we do. Absolutely. And this board has been doing it for a long time before you ever got here. So the bottom line is, you can't expect some people to have open arms to you when you talk so badly about them in a meeting. You made terrible accusations. Let's be upfront and honest. This board is still moving forward. Do you deny that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
How about the county administrator? How about Robert Reinschuttle?
Oh, okay, let's talk about that, Ms. Baugh.
Go ahead
So-
and dialogue, ladies.
Commissioner, to you, and I have the floor. Thank you very much.
No,
I have
you just
the floor.
asked me
Mr.
to
Chair,
talk to you about
I have the
that.
floor.
I
You
made
two were
no
dialoguing.
allegations about our county administrator. Our clerk of the court did. I made none. I made no
You
allegations.
are taking up my time that I have
because
on
you
the
are
floor.
lying again.
Again? I'm lying again? Commissioner, you tried to get him thrown out and put on leave. Yes, you did, for things that he did not do.
I didn't
And
say
you
he
should
did
have known
anything.
that.
I didn't say he did anything. The clerk of the court did.
The bottom
Our
line
comptroller.
is, you
Grave
are so busy,
concerns.
I still have the floor. And you talk about professionalism? He has the right to do his job. Everyone in this room, every employee, every staff member has the right to be able to do their job without interference from this board. So remember that. The bottom line is, we have a lot to do. We can do it if we all work together. So stop trying to burn the house down. Stop trying to always find fault. He's doing a good job. Maybe not 100% the way you want it, but he's doing a pretty good job. And by the way, I've been here longer. He's the best county administrator we've ever had
In your
here
opinion,
at the county.
I hear you.
In my opinion.
I
I've
hear
seen
you.
more done and more produced in a short amount of time. So try to get along with the board members as a whole, including me. I try to get along with you. You make it impossible. You do it on purpose. Try to get along with everyone. Let's all work together. We have great staff people. Let's all work together.
Yes,
That's
Commissioner
all I'm
Ball.
saying.
We do have great staff people. As you exit the room when certain staff members come up here because you have a personal vendetta. So, I mean, this is just ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and anyone who knows this board knows that I am not the troublemaker. Thank you. Follow the law. Follow the law.
Okay, thank you. That concludes our workshop today. We're adjourned. Okay, welcome back. We just need to do a quick correction for the record. We need to hold public comment very quickly. So if there's anyone who would like to come forward to speak on today's work session, any of the items discussed in today's work session, please come forward at this time. Okay, seeing no one, we will go to the phone briefly. Is there anyone on the phone who has called in to discuss today's CIP work session?
No calls.
Okay, having no calls, then I was going to adjourn the meeting. Commissioner Satcher is going to make a quick statement.
Just a quick statement. So we had people, just a little mix-up, easy to do. So we had some public that were here that left. I recognize their faces and know and have had meetings with them. So I just want to give the board a heads up that I would imagine to almost certainty that their issue is going to be the east connection of Mulholland Road to Rye Road, that small portion where the county already owns the land, and that is getting to be a bigger and bigger neighborhood, and everyone is having to funnel all the way up to Golf Course. And of course, Golf Course is one of those roads that's already a little behind. And so taking pressure off of that road overall might be a good, small, manageable project, and that's why I was asking about the procedure for adding to the CIP. I will probably add that. There's some talk about that impact fee agreements may be the best way to go with that, but since they weren't able to state what I am relatively certain of their concerns are, I wanted to do it on their behalf. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that leeway. I do appreciate it.
I'm not getting into anything here. All I'm saying to the public who maybe isn't listening but will go back and watch and realize they missed this, we've got another budget work session tomorrow afternoon starting at 1:30. These are vague discussions, so anyone who wanted to call in that maybe is not getting the chance to because of this correction can call in tomorrow and still discuss whatever they want. Everything is still budget related. It's still part of the budget discussion. It's a work session. So if you wanted to say something about Mulholland Road, you wanted to say something about something else in the CIP, then tomorrow afternoon at 1:30, we're reconvening once again about budget, and feel free to call in and discuss anything you were going to discuss that you maybe missed today. That's all.
Yes, sir. And of course, people can always email us as well. It's really the best way to get one-on-one communication. And I apologize for the confusion when we went to recess, when we went to adjourn the meeting at the end. Anyway, this meeting is adjourned.